All right, guys, so what's going on? Hope everybody's out there staying high speed and motivated, accomplishing their goals, whatever they may be. Obviously, I'm just doing this sort of on a whim, okay? I just got done doing a run, had my thoughts thrown around while I was doing a run, and I thought it would be a good time to go ahead and share my thoughts now on what I thought about some of the comments that the Secretary of War made during his speech to all the generals recently. Obviously, you know, that news has spread like wildfire all over the place, and I didn't want to get too ahead of myself by coming up with any off-the-cuff opinions before I had some time to digest it and come up with a reasonable thought of my own based on all the other information that's been out there and that I've had access to. And I definitely think that's a good idea for everybody to do. So I've had some time to reflect, right? If you didn't know, I'm assuming you do know, but if you didn't know, Pete Hegseth mentioned he was pretty stern by the way he talked to the generals. I guess stern is the word. He was really direct, I think is a better way to say it. Very direct. He chose his words in a way where it was just clear speech, which I think pissed a lot of people off. Honestly, I don't think it should piss people off. I think some of his words were just people words, you know. We're just not really used to hearing that in political spaces. I think hearing real people talk, right? But you know, he was very blunt with a lot of the words he chose, but specifically talking about the PT standards that he has directed to be strictly upheld moving into the future. I think he is on the right track, and I think he's identified a systemic problem that has been in the military for some time now. Okay, I think the PT standards have been sort of diminishing a little bit over the last 5 to even 10 years. I think there's plenty of units out there that uphold very strict PT standards. There's plenty of service personnel out there that hold themselves to a very high standard of physical fitness on their own if they're not receiving that direction from their leadership. But I would say overall in the military, there has been a noticeable decline, okay, in what is required physically of a service member to be able to do as far as physical fitness goes. There's, you know, I would say there's multiple reasons for that. A lot of it kind of comes from his comments when he said that leaders are not feeling as empowered to uphold those standards for one reason or the other, okay? And I think that it's also because we as a military I think we've been trying to get it right. I think we've been trying to do things fairly across the board, right? But it just hasn't really been hitting the mark. Like nothing has really been sticking the way that it was ever intended to stick. This is just my opinion, right? I think the attempts have been there. I think there has been like the ideas of whoever is coming up with these PT standards over the years have always been with good intentions. I don't think there's any nefarious reasons why there's been a decline. I think it's just something that has naturally taken its course over these processes that we just can't seem to be getting right. And because of all that, it's like, you know what, enough is enough. We've spent enough money, we've spent enough time, we've spent enough effort, we've caused enough confusion. We need to just go back to the basics and say, hey, look, listen, if you're going to be a service member, if you're going to be a war fighter, which I think is a good word, you know, I really do, you have to be a very physically fit person in order to accomplish that, in order to fill that job title appropriately, right? If you're going to be a soldier, if you're going to be a Marine, if you're going to be a sailor, if you're going to be whatever, if you're going to represent the United States military as a whole in general, regardless of where you're working in it, you should be a fit person, right? And that is for a lot of different reasons, I think. Not only is it because we should be upholding a professional appearance, right, and look like we're fit. I think that's important, but it's also because when you're a fit person and you prioritize your physical fitness, there's a lot of other benefits that come along with that. So you're going to be more resilient, both physically and mentally. You're going to be more ready to take on certain physical challenges that are either going to happen because they were planned, or they're going to be unplanned instances where you have to just all of a sudden be ready to get up and do something. All right. And also it just builds esprit de corps, right? I mean, I remember the old days, you know, when there was, and I know a lot of units still have unit PT, but there's a lot of units out there that don't have unit PT. But I remember there was, you know, in the old days, everybody did unit PT. You'd be driving around post in the morning or running around post in the morning, and whatever you're doing in the mornings around post, everybody was out doing PT. And a lot of times they'd be doing it like group runs, or they're out in the field and they're doing, you know, PT all together. And while back then it seemed kind of like monotonous, a lot of guys and gals out there would say, oh man, I could do better PT on my own if I just was afforded the ability to do so. But it doesn't matter. The fact that we were doing PT together in a forced environment like that, it does raise esprit de corps. That's in my experience anyway, because you're doing things together. And there's going to be a lot of things that service members end up having to do throughout their career, whether it's in wartime or not, that they're going to be forced to do together, even if they don't want to. So you might as well, you know, be accustomed to doing that. It's just going to make you more resilient, right? Going back to the resilience piece. So you know, overall, you know, I don't think, as far as the PT piece goes, that's what I'm sticking to on this video. I think it's a good thing. I think his blunt way of putting it on the table, hey, look, this has not been working. We need to just go back to what we knew was working at the time. And I really appreciated it when he said, we have to do a PT test, a combat fitness test, he said, that is able to be done no matter the environment you're in, right? Because we all see where the ACFT, the AFT now, this is for the Army, right? That's you know, what I have most knowledge in. It's not something that can really be done in like a combat environment. I mean, obviously that hasn't necessarily been tested, not in real combat, right? But it's hard enough to pull off that test just in garrison, you know, and it costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of resources. You got to have something that you can just do anywhere. You know, back in GWAT, and I'm going to show the age there, back in GWAT, you know, you could do an old PT test any time of the day, any conditions. It didn't matter because it required no equipment, and you could just do it on a whim, okay? And it wasn't even a big deal to be told like the day prior, hey, you're going to take a PT test tomorrow, because it wasn't like the most outrageous thing to have to plan for, okay? And I will give the ACFT and the AFT it's fair props in saying it is a very good test. It's a very holistic test, but it's a good workout, right? If you do that and that's like your workout for the day, that's a pretty good workout overall. It's a challenging test, especially if you work really hard at it. But it's just not super practical, especially in an environment where resources are limited, or in a combat environment. It's just not going to get done. It's just not. And I think, you know, everybody's realizing that, and they're putting the cards on the table and they're saying, yeah, this might just not be the way to go. So I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but the memo has been released saying that these things are definitely going to happen. I believe it's within 90 days of the memo being released, which was released September 30th. So just, what is it, a couple days ago? And it's dictating that I believe it's within 90 days these things have to happen. You have to have every service member, regardless of rank or position, has to take 2 PT tests a year. You have to take the service PT test. So for the Army, that would be the AFT. And then you have to do, if you're in combat MOS, you'll have to take a combat related physical fitness test, which for the Army is probably going to be the expert soldier badge equivalent, something like that. And then also, if you are not in a combat MOS, I think you have to double check me on this. Pretty sure you can either take that test or you can take a non-combat MOS fitness test, which I don't think has been developed yet. But I guess, you know, the people that are going to be in charge of that are probably spinning their wheels right now trying to figure out what that looks like. But both those tests are going to have to be able to be done in a combat environment. Or if you're not in a combat MOS, you can just take 2 AFTs. Okay, I think that's fair enough. I think that's a good starting point. I think it's still going to need to evolve a little bit, depending on what happens in the world and where we find ourselves as a military, and you know, what sort of environment we find ourselves in the future. But for now, we're definitely on the right track. I think to put it out there, to wrap it up, I think to put it out there and say, hey, look, this is a problem. It can't be a problem anymore. We've got to fix it. We're going to kind of go back to our roots, and we're going to do what we know works, and we're going to hold that standard, and we're going to be strict about it. I think, you know, at the end of the day, that is nothing new. Okay, that's really not that big of a deal to hear. I feel like that's really just what we should have been doing the whole time. And honestly, for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of War, right, to have to come up on the stage and say that is kind of like, ooh, okay, all right, yeah, all right, we got to do this now. You know what I mean? This is real, because now the big boss is starting to see there's a problem, and we can't let this continue to be a problem. You know, so I don't see it being like a big deal. I don't see it being a big issue. I think it's really what should have been going on the whole time anyway, and I think it's only going to make us a better fighting force in the end. And at the individual service member level, it's only going to make us better, right? It's only going to make you better to be prioritizing PT like that. And I think at the end of the day, you're getting paid to go work out and be physically fit. So I mean, who else gets to do that? You know, like athletes. You know, I mean, it's a pretty good gig, right? You shouldn't be complaining about it if you are somebody who is having thoughts about complaining about doing more PT. I don't think that's the right move. You should be excited that the priority is there to be physically fit. Now you're going to definitely be given and afforded the opportunity to be physically fit. All right, so. But if you guys do need any help, remember, grittysoldier.com has the best fitness programs available out there for military personnel. All right, so don't forget that. Anyway, I just wanted to push that out while it was on my mind. I wanted to be able to speak clearly and with enough, you know, from the heart is what I was going for here. Yeah, so let me know what your guys' thoughts are on that. And if you want me to kind of dig into anything more than what the Secretary of War stated, let me know that. I do have some more processing to do on some of the other things that he said in my own mind, right? But I'm more than happy to share my own thoughts on that as well. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.